like I was saying, it makes great coffee if you've got time for it. But like the little pouring water over it and just waiting, I don't get it. Maybe someone can enlighten me, but like I don't get it. All right,
You
coffee's
just
coffee.
you need to upgrade your coffee situation. That's all I'll
No,
say
I
about
did, and that's why I upgraded it too, like
No, you
pouring it
made
over
your
like a
life more
caveman.
complicated, is what you did.
I was
You can
told
debate coffee
by Yeah, I
all
was told
day.
by someone fancier than me that it was the way to go. Just pouring it over there and just staring at it, and just anyway. Welcome to
Yeah.
Coffee Talk, folks. You can tell it's just Audra and I hanging out today. Brian decided that he wanted to eat at a gas station, and lesson learned. So
He's not with us today, but he'll be back next episode. Um, but we do have some exciting stories to talk about today. A lot going on. Obviously, it is
very
election
exciting.
day.
It's election day.
Yes,
You can tell I went out and voted. I hope all of you went out and voted as well. Audra, did you go vote?
I did. I mailed in my ballot because I'm in
Oh,
Colorado.
you're in
So
a
yes,
fancy
vote.
state. You're in a fancy
We have a big
state.
graphic. Yes. So did you vote in person, Mick?
I did. I did. I enjoy that aspect of it. That, and I live like 3 blocks from a polling station, and I went for a walk and got my sticker. I don't. You don't get a sticker with mail-in voting, do you?
Oh, I did, but I just didn't save it. I threw it away, but I should have saved it so I could, show my.
Post online and get those internet points. That's what democracy is really all
Exactly.
about,
I mean, it's all about the stickers, right?
And
That's the whole
speaking
point.
of voting, good segue there, Mick.
Yes. Speaking of voting, excuse me, we have a exciting award that Surge was nominated for, and this is the Coffee Talk Show. We were nominated for podcast or live stream of the year. This is the SANS Difference Makers Awards. So super exciting, and I just want to say thank you to one of our viewers who nominated us for this. It's, I was not familiar with these awards, and just to see everyone that's up for nominations, it's just really exciting. So I'll share the link if anyone wants to vote. I know they select SANS selects a winner, and then they also have a popular vote. So that is the link to vote if you would like to do that. And then also, if you haven't voted yet for the U.S. midterms, if you're in the United States, it's time to get on that.
Time to get on that. But yeah, also vote for us. Go vote for us,
Yeah,
and
vote for
then
us also.
go vote in the midterm. So yeah, and like Audra said, it's super humbling, super amazing to be nominated. As an incredible group of peers there. So uh, vote for us, and then go vote for your next leaders. So
Yes.
we'll come back to some more voting election day talk. But first, Audra, what do you got for news for us? Now that
Yeah,
we're
let's
on
go
the
ahead and
election theme.
let's run the news clip. All right, so our first story is, of course, election related. So the U.S. midterms are underway, as we just said, and CISA is reminding voters that there is currently no credible threat to voting equipment in the United States. And here we have a tweet from Jen Easterly. She is the director of CISA, and she said that ordinary outages and even low-level cyber activity is to be expected. It happens every day in this country, and it will not affect the ability of election officials to carry out a safe and secure election. So we wanted to start off with that because that's obviously something that's on the minds of many people today. And I've seen, a few tweets here and there about, small scale issues in terms of, I saw a tweet about a DDoS attack against a clerk's office in Illinois, which is, an availability issue. But fortunately, our electoral our systems that we have in place, they're very robust. They have backup plans. So if something doesn't go according to plan, there's always, a fallback. So, and Mick, I know you have a lot of experience with this. So, what do
It's
you?
exactly like you said, Audra. It's there's going to be hiccups along the way. It's just the nature of the beast. When something this big that was written several hundred years ago, according to an agricultural calendar, scales to hundreds of millions of people, like sometimes it doesn't do that as well as it does in other places. Also, the internet, the way resources are allocated, and like there's a DDoS attack, but you don't know what, system hardening was in place before that. And was it a target of opportunity or was it just a directed target? And it's things like that that'll always be some kind of gray area for a lot of people. And like you mentioned, and Director Easterly mentioned, these kind of things happen every day. It doesn't make it normalized. Like, please don't think it's normalized behavior for that to happen. It shouldn't happen, but it does. So, just go vote, keep it moving, and understand that folks behind the scenes are working super hard to keep those systems up.
Right. And in terms of like physical threats, I would say the only thing that I found the most concerning is threats like to physical safety of election workers. And that's something where fortunately, I think it was the National Guard has some of their members of their cyber team out in force today to help out. And so it's just a huge collection of people across the country that come together to help with this process. So yeah, fortunately, everything seems to be going according to plan, and we'll keep watching throughout the day, especially as the results start to come in. So very exciting to watch all of that happen. So
it's super exciting, as neutral as we are. Yeah, it's really exciting. It's like you mentioned, the National Guard mobilization. It's really the physical protection of election workers is obviously paramount. It's just an incredible timeline where that's what we're doing. So like you mentioned, the process is there, the physical is there, the election results are coming in, but there's also a couple of stories about, the election theories out there, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's a huge component, right? Is information, and that includes disinformation and just misinformation and narratives that people have in their mind about election security and the integrity of our systems. So that's something that is probably the number one issue, I would say, when it comes to elections in the U.S. and in other countries as well. I think you mentioned, was it Brazil that just elected?
That's right.
A new president?
In what is a really, really weird electoral cycle in Brazil. And if you're not spun up on it, like take the 30 seconds and Google it and search engine it, whatever. And just check out what happened. Like a Bolsonaro who was in power for quite some time. And I gotta be honest, not a lot of folks expected him to lose an election. And he did to Lula. And it's a really, really unique story of how that played out. And there was evidence of misinformation campaigns directed at both candidates, which, when you look at everything in Brazil that's going on right now with just the political process, the country in general, the economy there, to see misinformation campaigns in that election, to your point, it is a global thing. It happens everywhere. So credit to those teams that are working not just in U.S. elections, but in global elections to kind of, control as much of that as possible.
Yep. And I put the link to that story from Reuters in the comment section if anyone's curious to learn more about that recent election as well. But moving on now to our next story. This one we couldn't do the show without talking about because it took up so much of our energy and time and concern just in the last week. And of course, I'm talking about the OpenSSL vulnerabilities. So here is a blog that Splunk Surge wrote. We released this last week. About the vulnerabilities. We have CVE 2022-3602 and then also 3786. And these were both buffer overflow vulnerabilities. And they had so OpenSSL put out this advisory a week prior to this coming out, basically saying that we're going to release the security fix for a critical vulnerability in OpenSSL, which is basically the open source implementation of SSL and TLS protocols. And so we were all bracing for this, like, oh no, how big is this going to be? We knew it was only going to impact, versions 3.0 and later, which, obviously, since that's the latest version, it might not be as widely adopted. But, with Heartbleed and some of the other vulnerabilities we've seen with OpenSSL, that was something that we had in the back of our minds. But when it came out, it was actually downgraded from critical to high severity. So still an important vulnerability. Both of these are important to patch as soon as possible if you are affected. But of course, it wasn't necessarily rising to the severity that we had expected.
I think you're 100% right. I remember my time in a different life when I had talent and did hands-on keyboard things. responding to Heartbleed was terrible because of the severity of it. And this was more like Heartburn. Am I right? It was just
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, Mick. That's clever.
Thank you. So it was just a lot of hype behind it and a lot of researchers, hey, this is going to be a very bad thing, because that was the mindset. And like you mentioned, the severity was downgraded as information was released about the details of it. It's pretty hard to exploit on its face. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't patch, but it became, something to be very, very concerned about, and drop everything. And a lot of teams did. So you saw a response for it. And to be honest, I don't know if it was a bad thing, too many of these, and it's like the little cyber kid that cried wolf, but I feel like InfoSec does that anyway.
Yeah, it's still a vulnerability. It's still something that people need to be aware of and patch. Patching is super important, but I'm still kind of unclear on just how many systems are vulnerable to this, because the reality is not everyone's going to patch when a new version comes out. And because these were two buffer overflow vulnerabilities, we kind of looked at all the information presented, and it looked like remote code execution was highly unlikely in this scenario. So that was another reason why it was not necessarily as critical or severe as we thought it might be. But anyway, moving on now, we have plenty of ransomware stories.
That's not new. That's not new at all. More.
As always, our ransomware roundup. So to start with, this is a big story that's developing today, and this is Medibank, which is one of Australia's largest health insurance providers. They were hit with a ransomware attack recently. And it's this group called BlogXX, which has nearly identical encryptors to our Evil. So you can, guess that there might be some ties there. But they began leaking what they claim is stolen data from Medibank. And the company itself claims and confirms that the compromised data includes names, dates of birth, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. And that's for 9.7 million customers. And there's also possible health claims data that may have been compromised as well for about 480,000 customers. So a concerning situation there, and we'll keep following that to see what happens. And they said that they will not pay the ransom in this case, and that aligns with what the Australian government is recommending, and what we hear again and again, from the U.S. government as well, is to not pay, not to enable ransomware operators. And then another group. This is Azov Ransomware. This is a story from Bleeping Computer. They are reporting that this Azov ransomware, which was recently observed, and I think it was from illegal software downloads, was how it was getting onto these systems. And it's really just wiper malware. It's not really ransomware in the sense that it destroys data. It makes it look like it's encrypted, but it's actually just completely destroying the data and then infecting other programs. And there is a ransom note, but it tells victims to contact security researchers and journalists, like in an attempt to frame them for the attack. So there's actually no ransom demand. It's really just a wiper attack, unfortunately. So something to watch for, and don't, be careful if you're downloading software illegally online.
I guess it's the data of the beast. It's just, anyway, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, last story. So this one, last week, I believe it was, the White House wrapped up a 2-day ransomware summit where they had a whole bunch of international members come in, where they discussed, obviously the threat of ransomware is a global issue, and they agreed to create an international counter ransomware task force. So the primary objectives of this group is going to be coordinated disruption, and then also information sharing, which is very important because, obviously we hear about these ransomware groups and their affiliates, which are really spread all over the world. So if there's a ransomware attack in one country and the affiliates in another country, that might help with prosecution, unless, of course, Russia's involved, which makes it much more difficult in terms of, prosecution. So that's all for ransomware. And Mick, I believe, are you still there? Oh, good. I thought you'd left me all alone.
No, I think just the democracy overloaded my internet connection, and just all the freedom votes. So
well, we can't complain. Can't complain about that. So yeah, that's all we have for our ransomware roundup. But let's go ahead and show some of our upcoming events, because we have some other exciting things going on. And of course, to reiterate, with the midterm elections, if you have not voted yet, it's not too late. You can go to howto.vote, find information for each individual state. Also, Mick, you're speaking at an event coming up later this month, the New York Metro InfraGard. That's pretty exciting. And then obviously we have Gov Summit just right around the corner, December 14th. So a lot to look forward to. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, so let's go ahead and roll our 60-second charity challenge clip.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
All right, so this is a story from The Record, which is about the Red Cross. And so they have proposed creating a digital emblem representing the Red Cross that they could apply to hospital websites, other humanitarian websites, in order to try to protect them from cyber attacks in the event that there's some sort of cyber warfare. So this is obviously a hypothetical that they're preparing for in the future, ways to kind of identify, like in a physical conflict, you would have Red Cross workers with the cross on them to identify that they're not soldiers, they're there for humanitarian purposes. And so that is what the challenge is today, is to kind of give our thoughts on this. And of course, Lucky, our producer, will be judging, but of course, we want to hear from everyone watching. So if you have an opinion on who has the better take on this, whether it's me or Mick, which will be interesting to see because I have not spent much time knowing what I'm going to say. So we'll find out.
I have spent my entire life not knowing what I'm going to say. So you get used to it after a while. You just wing it.
You just wing it. Yeah, you're good at winging it. So do you want to go first since you're so good?
No, not at all. I'm not at all. I think, in the spirit of not wanting to go first, I think you should.
Okay, well, I can go first, but just a little bit more background before I dive into this. This would be, they're looking at different ways, because this is what I think is the most interesting part, is the ways.
That's a whole lot of filler. All right.
Okay, fine. I will go, Lucky, if you want to roll the timer. Okay. So first of all, I want to applaud the Red Cross for thinking ahead, obviously taking proactive steps to try to protect hospitals in the event that a conflict spreads into the cyber domain. But I'm not convinced really that a digital emblem would be any form of actual deterrence, because even in physical conflict, the first thing that comes to my mind is the war in Ukraine. And even with, a detailed GPS system and maps in order to help target or eliminate targets, that did not stop Russia from bombing a maternity hospital in Mariupol back in March. So, hospitals are not off limits apparently in physical conflict. So in terms of cyber, that could be the same case. But I do think identifying hospital networks could be beneficial. But the real issue facing hospitals is ransomware and cybercrime. And I do think that these groups are not deterred by morals or any sort of concern for victims. That's it.
It's you staring at the timer.
Go ahead, Mick. What do you have?
Okay, ready? All right. So the idea here is that when you see medics in a combat zone or something like that, they wear a big vest, have a cross, they still have on a bulletproof vest, right? The ICRC has already noted that this is no substitute for actual cyber defenses, cyber deterrent tools, and anything like that. Now, my background in healthcare, my background in cyber, the intersection of those, I've seen just through no fault of the hospital or the medical staff themselves, it's just poor security. It's just lack security. It's not prioritized because, to be honest, it's not a priority. If you are in a conflict zone providing healthcare to people, making sure something's patched isn't the top of your mind. So having a big red flag on it would really draw more attention to it. I think the answer really is a robust hygiene program. It has to be prioritized, or devices have to be built with security built in from the start, and that's how you keep security at the forefront instead of a Red Cross emblem.
Nice. Well, what do people watching think? Does anyone have an opinion on who won? You won't hurt our feelings, except Mick. That might hurt his feelings if you vote for.
No, we already decided who won. Who's our big winner today? Aside
Winning things
from,
left week.
democracy is our big winner today. I was kidding earlier. I voted today, and I did see democracy on the ballot. So there you go.
Good.
It was there.
Good. That's
I
always
don't think
good.
David gets to vote. David always votes for you, Audra. So I'm not sure. Lucky
Ooh,
who
thank
won?
you, David. Is David
Um,
voting or
I was
who's
gonna
making
say
it?
Mick, so it
Okay,
seems
well,
like
lucky
Mick.
you are the last. You are the ultimate judge. So I will.
Thank you.
I will go ahead
Thank you.
and pay up to the charity, which I will gladly pay to this week.
Actually, I thought we decided that Ryan is going to pay to the charity.
Oh,
Just
well,
for
we'll loop Ryan in because just to make sure he's a part of today's episode. We'll make sure he makes a donation. But the charity that we decided to choose this week is the League of Women Voters, which is a nonprofit or a nonpartisan, rather, grassroots organization. They're dedicated to making sure people participate in our democracy and elections, and they're active all over the United States. So that is our charity today. And let's go ahead and transition now to the deep dive.
And now we talk about things that just happen to be on our minds with who's ever here, because we made this up before I knew who'd accept my meeting invite.
So of
I
course we
think we're
couldn't.
going to have to add a graphic of you in some kind of scuba gear. Like
Every
if you don't,
time, I'll have to plan a whole trip just to get you guys to stop talking to me
we'll
about
Photoshop it. We'll
or
actually
that.
no. We'll just
But,
do an
I wouldn't
AI
mind going on a
generated
trip.
one.
I wouldn't mind, scheduling a trip to the Bahamas or wherever it is people go scuba diving. Be fun.
I went and I got certified in Belize. It was
Okay.
fantastic. But I mean, like the
I think,
big old, Men of Honor movie. The big weighted one that just you sank to the bottom and walked around for a
Yeah.
little bit, like that kind of scuba. It's just.
Yep. Do you think Splunk would expense it for me if I make it a work trip for the sake of coffee talk?
Sure. I will approve that myself. I am
Yeah.
king of the finance. That's me.
Yeah, Mick has connections. He can make it happen. So anyway, we decided to talk about Mastodon today because it's really all the talk on Twitter. People moving over to Mastodon, which is, I guess, an open source site similar to Twitter where people can share their thoughts about whatever they want to talk about. The only difference is they have different servers for different topics. So there's, tech, I think for InfoSec. I made an account. I have not used it. I'm still learning how it all works. I can share my information
Did you
if anyone
enable
wants to follow my.
multi-factor authentication, Audra?
Sorry, what?
Did you enable multi-factor authentication on your account?
I believe so. Yeah, I have my 2FA app set up. I have not actually logged in to use it, but it is set up. So if anyone wants to join me on Mastodon, it's just so interesting that
and that's the segment, folks. Thanks for watching. Just join Audra on Mastodon. It's the only reason
That's the only reason why we're here. I just need more followers, because I think I have like 5. So
did you join like a specific like the InfoSec exchange or
yeah,
Mastodon social or?
Yeah, it's infosec.exchange is the server that I'm on, which I guess is the cybersecurity place to be. But there's a lot of places to choose from for different interests. And I'm kind of curious. I don't even know. So if someone knows more than I do, if I am interested in more than one thing, can I jump to a different server? Do I have to make another account? I need to sort all this. I have no idea how it works, but
it's your grasp on social media that's really been amazing to watch. It's just super good how much you've leaned into it. I am on the back in my day. Now I too have a Mastodon account. You might be able to guess what the handle is or not. I don't know how keen your Batman skills are, viewers, but I don't know as well. I've seen posts from other folks from other servers, and it's pretty simple. But I don't. Before Twitter, there was something else. There was something else. There was something else. I think the evolution of social media. I hope Mastodon catches on as a niche thing. I think it the potential to create an echo chamber is the same as it is in any other social media platform. But so far, from what I've seen, and I've not really poked at the InfoSec angle of it, I just see a lot of really cool landscape photos, and that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Marcus, who's on the team at Surge, he is really fond of Mastodon. He's a big open source fan. And so I'm going to talk to him later today and see if he can give me some pointers on how it works. And it's just another app. So now I'm curious, if I tweet something, do I need to tweet on both platforms? It just seems
I
like a
think
lot
you
of
can try program something. And yet, Marcus is a fantastic example of someone who's leaning into Mastodon. Like the photos, all of his photos from the Shire are incredible to see when he goes and visits all of his family there. So I would definitely check him out as well. But I think Mastodon, there was a big point that it had over 1 million users.
Mhm.
I think last month MySpace had around 6 million
Really?
view. Yeah.
Wow.
So internet, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but it's right around 6 million. It doesn't mean active accounts, but
Yeah, that's
so
still,
social
yeah,
media is social media, right?
right. Yeah, that's interesting. MySpace. If you had told me that MySpace was just gone, I would have believed you. So it's very interesting.
No, I think Tom is still out there somewhere. He's just,
Still out there with his
doing that
whiteboard and
Scrooge McDuck dive into money and just.
yep. So Mastodon. We'll maybe next episode we'll have an update on our
But your
you have it.
experiences so far, and any users that are out there, let me know if what you've done if you've joined as well. Your reactions. The knock I've heard is the UX is not great, but I have not played with it enough to have opinion one way or the other. I think the organization seems really nice. The people, the ability to track topics, but again, it's very limited, decentralized server, and I think privacy is another discussion where your messages and your data are only as private as the admins of the server you join want them to be, and I think
Mhm.
that's an important note to have.
Yeah, and
Again,
I guess
any service provider, right?
yeah, definitely. And the whole reason for this big migration to Mastodon has to do with, obviously Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and then the changes with the verification process for Twitter, because it used to be that the check marks were reserved for verified, journalists or, public facing people. But if you're paying for it, then does that change credibility or the spread of misinformation? That's something I've seen a lot of people talk about, and that's one of the questions, I guess, with that
Well,
change.
I did not pay for it, and as someone who spreads Muppet misinformation often, I think again, it's a whole separate thing. It's a separate conversation. I think the evolution of social media platforms, way back when BBSs, just boards and things like that, and then before I begets ICQ, and then the evolution of Friendster to MySpace to Facebook, all the different platforms, and they're slightly different. I think just Twitter is going to move to something else, but again, I don't see a lot of people leaving forever and ever. I don't
Right.
see on the election day theme, bringing it back to that. I'm going to move out of the country. Like you had friends that said that, right? And like
Oh,
how many
I mean,
friends?
I heard people considering it and looking into what would it take to move to Canada, or I've heard conversations, but of course it's always just, I haven't actually heard of someone I know moving
Hmm.
like that, unless, yeah. So
Right.
it's
So
about,
like
I think we lost Mick. Well, maybe that's a sign that we're done for today. But thank you everyone so much for tuning in, and we'll be back, I believe, in 2 weeks. I think we'll post it on the Splunk LinkedIn page when we have our next episode scheduled, because around the holidays it gets a little bit it changes a little bit when we'll have a show. But again, thank you everyone so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Surge.